to take a look at what is happening in the dailies this morning. I have the Daily Nation with me. I have the Star. I'm looking at the Standard, the Business Daily, as well as Taifa. But also, I am not alone in studio. I am joined by Professor Gitile Naituli. Thank you so much for joining us, governance expert. Arnold Maliba, public policy analyst. Thank you, Arnold, for joining us this morning as well. And also joining us from Mandera County, face that you perhaps are familiar with, but has been missing from the screens for quite some time as well, Abdullahi Alas, who is a public policy and governance analyst as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Abdullahi. Good to see you after quite some time as well. Indeed.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning to
treating you well. You've become a farmer. You've decided to leave Nairobi and all the troubles here.
Well, thank you very much, Zainab. Mandera is home. Mandera is where my children
are. So I guess we'll have to fix that voice there, but we will be getting to Abdullah as well in a moment. But we are going to begin with what's happening on the Daily Nation, and I have my hard copy here, and I know my panelists also have their hard copy there, but this is what we have. Court deals Ruto a blow on new taxes. It says, hold your horses. The High Court has extended orders blocking the implementation of the Finance Act 2023 for another 5 days in a move that will see the taxman fail to collect up to 5.78 billion, even as Omtata trained his guns on EPRA boss. And you can see the face there of the Busia Senator Okia Omtata, who now wants the court to punish EPRA MD Daniel Kipto after the agency adjusted fuel prices upwards despite being served with the court order. Well, it might be reprieve for taxpayers opposed to the new law that will hit their pockets hard. But what does it mean for the government, which says it is now going to lose 5.78 billion shillings in terms of tax revenue? Arnold, I mean, so this is in court now. We have to wait another 5 days to get at least some sort of leeway or understanding of what is going to be happening, a ruling from the court. What does this mean for the government?
Well, first of all, the nation has actually done a little bit of a good story. It's exploratory, talking about both ends, quite balanced, talking about what the ruling really means. Even going into the figures, talking about 5.7 billion shillings.
Right.
And that in and of itself, you need to then ask, if you look at the document in totality, you start asking what will it have done? Even though in the long run, I think this is a discussion that scholars and lawmakers, and even as a nation, we need to start having, that in the administration of state, in the business of administration of state, do we really need to surrender so much power? That is a question that sometimes when you ask, you are looked at as an anti-justice person, an anti-judiciary person who is quite backward. But then all countries are asking this. When you put so much power into the hands of the judiciary, for example, we now have got a financial year. One of those things that we don't want to talk about now because we think 5 days is quite a small time is that critical services, for example, could be hampered from this particular end. Of course, people will argue that the previous Finance Act can actually serve. That only makes sense to those people who do not understand the budgeting cycle, who do not understand the legislative process and how a Finance Act really functions. I've actually seen guys saying that we are talking about a status quo. A status quo, so you're using 2022 Finance Act to run a new financial year. You will actually be running into headwinds. Eventually, you will end up with an audit query. In this country, when you have got an audit query, people say you have stolen. We do not care whether an audit query means that we don't understand how you use this money. We look at it from a point that so long as the Auditor General says that about 1 billion shillings wasn't used very well, we say you ate that money. So I think the courts also, we were speaking with Prof earlier on, and we think some of the prayers should sometimes be quite good. Like, for example, not the whole bill is actually contested. Why can't they put a block or a stay on some of those particular provisions as opposed to the entirety of the whole thing? So it doesn't really feel good. People will say 5 days is quite a small thing, but you know, I don't know when last you had 1 billion in your account. 5.7 billion shillings is quite substantive.
All right.
It's sometimes the money that some counties get.
Okay,
Yeah.
Prof, your thoughts?
I think the headline should have been a little more pro-judiciary. Court deals Ruto and blow. Oh, it is in a sense, but this is not a blow for Ruto. This is a stand on justice. People need to understand that the court is the last line of defense when a state goes wrong. You see, the reason why we have what is called the separation of powers is to enhance what is called the checks and balances. This is why you have the executive, the judiciary, and the parliament. So when the parliament surrenders its role as protector of the voiceless, when as a defense, when there is executive overreach, then the court comes in as the last line of defense. And that's what the court is doing right now. Because when you look at that bill, it was so casually drawn that we don't even understand whether it's a bill drawn by...
drawn, but Prof, there
too casual. Because you see, the whole process, when you look at it, you have the sources of revenue. They are not even telling what exactly they are funding with that money. You see, this thing should have been, the finance bill should be read together with the budget, with where the government is taking the money. So I hear also that there are some things which were sneaked in after Parliament and done its job, and only Parliament has authority under our laws to make the law. The executive cannot make the law. So, but I want to agree with him that I think what court may eventually do is zero in on contested areas. Because when you tell me insurance compensation is income, then you don't live in this world, let alone living in Kenya. Because compensation cannot be income because it's supposed to restore you. So when you tax insurance compensation, you are taxing people's assets.
But Prof, look, Arnold is mentioning something that if there were those particular contentious issues that within the bill...
Yeah, that's what I'm going there. I'm saying that the court can isolate the contested areas and put a stay on those contested areas. And then allow areas which are not contested to proceed. But you see, the problem the court couldn't be having is that 90% of the Kenyans said they didn't want any increase on this thing. And this
which is the main issue. Anyway.
Yeah. And then the government, the executive ignored that, and the parliament ignored that, making public participation useless. You see, when you tell us, when the government says that we're in a tight financial position, you expected a budget less than Uhuru Kenyatta budget. Because the government has tightened its belts, okay? So that there is control of expenditure. But right now, the budget was big, 3 point something over the Kenyatta budget. At the same time, you are raising taxes. At the same time, we have not seen any inclination that the government is controlling expenditures. Because, I mean, if you want to be honest, you see helicopters all over the country. I mean, even going to Kiambu, the ministers use helicopters. On Naivasha, they can't drive. It's like they are not able to. There is no control of governmental expenditure. A very simple thing Kibaki did, a very simple thing our neighbor in India, Ishelema in Zambia, and within 9 months, Ishelema has changed the trajectory of the Zambian economy 100%. So when you raise taxes and you have a bucket which has holes, you won't contain any money in that bucket.
But you have a government that came in with a very high debt burden, right? So
well,
they must
yes.
plug the debt burden. And it's also a new government which has its own development agenda for Kenyans. Where do you think they're going to get the money from?
Well, this is where you get the money. You don't get the money by increasing your personal expenditure. The government doesn't get the money by increasing government expenditure. Government gets the money by reducing government expenditure, arresting corruption, and then the money you raise is able now to service the debt and also to do other things. But also you have to remember that this government removed all the people who are arrested and charged with the KRA without them going through the process and allowing the court to declare them innocent.
All right. Let's hear from Arnold, then I'll get to Abdullah. Yes.
You know, Zainab, one of the problems I've actually encountered when looking at the commentary, when it comes to the finance bill and the budgeting process, is that both Kenyans and we who are in the commentariat are sounding like we've just landed from Mars. And that the budget process is something that happens you know, like it's an event. Well, it's actually a process. No one really wants to talk about the fact that let's start with the obvious things. All politicians are populists. All politicians.
Across the political divide.
Across the political divide.
Must use the populist ideas.
Because they get their votes and their mandate from the people. So even where politicians hate the people, they very much try to posture as if they love the people. And any politician who can get the easiest policy solution, an easy way around something, they will always go for that particular option. William Ruto, for example, has not lost an election ever since he started. Well, he lost when he was with Uhuru, but he still won his Eldoret North seat. But he was on the losing side then, and of course, with Raila a little bit in 2007. But as an individual, he's been through. All of us know how he works around. Anybody seated out there and thinking that William Ruto, in his right mind, in his first term, really has got this aspiration and ambition to frustrate Kenyans and will still be looking for a second term, that person then does not understand politics. There is definitely some reality, and that's why I actually was talking about, can we look at the budget as a process?
Does it?
Even if you looked at it from the MTEF background, let's use MTEF for example. This particular budget that we are having now, Zainab, you and I know, even Prof knows, that if you are to use MTEF, you know that the budget for next year is already almost ready. The whole process has started. You are looking at what you have now, what you are going to, and how you are auditing it. So the budget cycle is not just starting from people making noise in Parliament and everything else. By the time you and I get the budget document, it's been to the to Parliament, the budget office, more times than it is actually out here. The budget making process is not an executive function alone. Because if you are to even reduce the budget cycle to just 4 things, you will realize that actually at the development part of it, that is where, the formulation part of it, that is where the executive plays a role.
Okay.
But Parliament today is a budget-making body. I've said that a lot of times. That
Let me ask you this. There were more than 1,000 memoranda that were sent because of, I mean, the public had to have their say in the same.
Yes.
Was that, were the views of the public really, you know, given impetus during this particular process, as you say?
You see, this is the other challenge. Was the submission of memoranda the only tool and avenue available for Kenya to participate in this process? Was that the only open window for public participation? There had been several, including Kenyans delegating their, or rather donating their power to their members of parliament who were seated in there. This is what I'm trying to say. That this budget is informed by a situation that we find ourselves in, and it's not a doing of this particular regime. That a lot of the noises we are making now, a lot of the demands and the eloquence we present today about this particular budget should have been done 5 years ago when we ran the national credit card to the limit. When we breached the borrowing, for example, at that particular time, the Public Finance Management Act had set a limit of 55% of the GDP as the limit. We breached that when we had a sitting parliament and no one raised any complaint except Mutula Kilonzo, now the governor for Makueni, who said, what kind of parliament are we that we can actually breach our own laws and no one acts like it's a problem? So we got ourselves here. So William is in a place where he finds what the doctor has prescribed. By the way, the finance bill as was raw, that was what I would call a doctor's prescription after looking at you. Look. But then he has tried, being a politician, he's tried to throw it down because he's still populist. Otherwise, I can tell you, if the finance bill were to work the way experts within Treasury and even Parliamentary Budget Office, it will actually be much tighter than where we are, because we are not, let me not use the word going concern, we are not in very good waters. So from where we are, an injection is painful. I don't like an injection, even as an adult. I always have to say. So you're saying
there's no other option, that we must go
through this is a bitter pill that we have to swallow,
Prof,
and it's not a doing for a day.
Right, let's allow, Abdullah has been listening to both the views that have been put forth here. But Abdullah, from where you sit, you've watched what has happened and all these things that you know, have taken place, and developments with regard to the Finance Act, which is now suspended. It is in court. What do you make of all these things?
I'm coming to you live from home, and it's way better than Nairobi.
So I think we still have an issue there with this sound. I hope we can be able to fix that. But yeah, Prof, let's continue.
No, I tell you, primary weakness of the Kenyan leadership or the Kenyan state or the Kenyan government is that it's actually a colonial mindset in government. It's not a government of the people of Kenya. It has never been, by the way. When we inherited, you see, the colonial government was about exploiting Kenyans. Okay? So subsequent governments have continued with that mindset, except briefly under Kibaki, where the government seemed to actually think about the public. So I'm trying to think how you can be populist and then tax chamas, tax mama mboga, increase energy cost, because the only way you assist the country is to have energy cost as low as possible, so that the country is competitive, so that the producers, which is the factories, which is individuals, are competitive within the region and internationally. Okay. So when you cannot deal with the energy, when energy cost continues to rise, it means you don't have a plan on the economy, because that is where the plan lies on energy. So for us, Ruto was the savior the country was waiting for when he was campaigning.
But do you see
perhaps... You see, what
just a minute,
right.
Let me just...
Okay, let him finish.
Ruto was our savior. We saw the savior. He told us for 60 years, the dynasties have ignored you. Now I've come and I'm going to think about you. So this is what personally I thought he wouldn't do. He would have a very lean government, a small government,
okay.
A government of 14 ministers, okay? A government of 14 principal secretaries.
But how is he going to run his government with that?
You see,
no, the constitution,
right.
The constitution is not.
Which allows,
the constitution allows that setup.
Would
okay?
he be able to?
So,
a new
no,
right?
That is how you do when you don't have the money to waste.
Okay, I think it's only fair if we give Abdullah an opportunity as well. He's joined us. Let's just hear what Abdullah has to say on this particular development as well.
Sorry about the sound. Zainab, let me say something about going to court. When you go to court, you present evidence before a judge. So I've seen the arguments about the judiciary. When you present your evidence before a judge, then the judge looks at the evidence. So you do not blame the judiciary. Kenyans must read the petitions presented before judges. Judges look at the evidence, they look at the law, then they make decisions. So judiciary does not do anything unless there is a petition. So when I present my petition, my pleadings are the ones that are going to determine what I have requested for. Now the judges will look at what is it that this person is trying to say in this petition. Is it complying with the law? Is it true? Is it factual? Is it evidence? Then from there they made a decision. Now if you read the finance petition, there are more than 33 sections or even more that it's being challenged. Now, on the issue of running government, does it mean that when you have 50 cars, you have more than 40 PSS, and we have 22 cabinet secretaries, including the four that are joining the other day, and he was voted in by more than 7.2 million, does it mean that every person who voted for Ruto or campaigned for him must be in government for government to run? I don't think so. What we are lacking as a country is people in power. Our laws have no problem. Our judiciary has no problem. The problem we have is a parliament that is given instruction by the executive. Because how many people or members of parliament from UDA have told the president, can we at least wait for 12 months before we change anything? Now, when I'm in Mandera here, during the election, 5,000 shillings was buying me 41 liters of diesel for my car. Today, before the VAT was increased, it was buying me, after the subsidy was removed, it came down to 27 liters. Now that EPRA acted unconstitutionally and gave adjustment of prices, I am buying less than 24 liters, which means a place that I used to go to Mandera North with 41 liters, run my errands, go to my farm, go to my camel, and then come back. I can't do it right now. So how is that improving the lives of Kenyans?
But
how is that improving the lives of Kenyans?
There is an argument that Arnold has put forth, which essentially means that there is a reason why President William Ruto is making the pronouncement and the directives that he's making right now, because He's a fairly new president, just barely 10 or 11 months into office. So it doesn't make sense that the moment he just enters office, he decides to, implement punitive taxes on Kenyans. That we must accept as Kenyans that we should take an injection first, It is painful, but in the long run, this is sort of going to pay off.
Painful to whom? Painful to whom? Painful to the Kenyans, not the leaders or the political class. If I was among the advisors, we will have taken salary cuts first. Everyone working for government who is earning more than 150,000, because that money is paid by Kenyans, we take a cut. The president takes a cut. The deputy president takes a cut. Members of parliament takes a cut. Guys in treasury, everyone who is earning more than 150 or 200 takes a cut. Then from there, you have a lean government. Okay? High taxes, inflation, and bloated government have never worked. Look at Ronald Reagan did in 1975. Okay. Look at what Margaret Thatcher in 1975. Wait, I gave time to those two fellas. So let me also say this.
Just wind up, because we also have to take a break.
The problem we have in this country, is not the law.
Okay.
I said before on NTV and other places. Yes, I know. The problem we have in these people are the people in charge of those offices. Do they make decisions based on the interest of Kenya?
Okay.
Ruto pronouncement were made. He made the 6 stadiums from Ote to this. We know all these pronouncements. Right now, June has come. They promised the cylinder of gas will cost 300 to 500. We need cheaper phones. August is coming. Where are all those pronouncements? When are they going to be implemented? Okay, pronouncements are not policy.
All right. Let's hear from Arnold before we take a break.
You see, Zainab, the biggest problem we have in this country is that we love, when we are doing commentary, to speak about the ideal and not the real. And that is why there's this question we've always asked. Why do we have funny characters, quote unquote? Let me use the word quote unquote, as in funny characters winning elections. That's okay, you people probably, let's say, you people of a certain constituency had so-and-so, he's well educated, he knows what he should be doing, but you voted for so-and-so. There's something called the political culture in this country. When seated out here, none of us is actually sitting on the same seat where the president is. There is a way he won an election. And when he won an election, there are some obligations, there are political obligations that he actually must meet. It's easy, by the way, to throw around words about saying how if you took a salary cut, it will improve the economy. It will not. Because the biggest part of our corruption as a country, and I'm using the word our, including owning it, is procurement based. So even if you cut down on this money, it will still be stolen on the other end. So you cannot change a lot of things by taking a salary cut. We tried, when Kibaki came in, and in the new constitution, in the spirit of the new constitution, we tried to remunerate leaders decently, so that then, hoping that they will not be brought close, bribed, and look forward to that particular end. Of course, it's not working so well. We a lot of times try to equate ourselves to Singapore. That is a city of about slightly bigger than Nairobi, about 6 million people, and they're not the same. It's not like for like. But then look at the culture, the political culture. I want us to discuss political culture before we speak about the ideal. Okay. So it's easy to talk about a smaller government, a lean government, but then there are political ramifications. I want to actually tell you today, we might think that Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was actually a patriot when he refused to take the British offer to become president, and then when Kenyatta was still in jail. Do you know why he couldn't take it, realistically? Because he looked at Mount Kenya. These are the people who had been fighting, and he knew he would not rule this country if Kenyatta was still in jail. That is being realistic. So a lot of what we are talking about here, no one really, for example, wants to look at the state of our economy. We actually have to fix it. And like I've told you, if you have got a politician, a practicing politician, they'll tell you they will want something that is about the next election. Is what William doing about the next election? No, it doesn't look like it's the next election. He doesn't even come off. Whatever he's doing, that is not a leader who's looking forward to the next election. But then the truth is that he has looked at the economy and he made a lot of promises. I think when the president finally sits down, he will be in a position to tell us that I promised and there are things I didn't know.
All right.
Now that I know, this is what we are doing.
Okay.
And that's why he's telling you, I know sometimes he might come off as cocky when he says, tusipigiane kelele, but that is how a man who has been hit with the reality will speak. Let us also temper our ideal contributions with reality, because no one wants to talk about where we are as an economy, that the former regime simply ruined this particular economy, and we cannot do anything better than what we are doing now.
Wasn't the president part of the former regime?
Well, for the first 5 years, and then the next 5 years, he was just a passenger.
Okay. We have to take a break, Prof. But when you come back, I promise I'll begin with you. And of course, we're also joined by Frederick Okango, who is the Secretary, Kanu Political Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us, Fred. We'll now just take a very short break, but when we come back, we'll wind up on the paper and get into our conversation.